UCLA, I think these boys are trending in the right direction under head coach Chip Kelly. Now, you guys know that I love me some Chip Kelly, man. This dude is an offensive genius. And they're about to make the transition to the Big Ten Conference along with USC next year. And I'm really intrigued in seeing how UCLA fares in the Big Ten, because in the Big Ten, it's way tougher and way deeper than the Pac-12. And the biggest knock that I have against Chip Kelly is that this dude isn't really known for being an elite recruiter. Now, his recruiting classes at UCLA, they haven't been bad, but they could be better. They've been pretty middle of the pack. He normally recruits between the 30s and the 40 range. And his couple of years at UCLA got out to a really slow start, but the last 2 seasons, he has really started to pick it up. They went 8-4 in 2021, 9-4 in 2022. And even though Chip Kelly isn't known for being an elite recruiter, this dude knows how to get elite quarterbacks. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I know some of you Bruins fans have a love-hate relationship with the brother. He'll have some big games and some big moments, but he'll also have some moments in those big games where he'll end up making a bone-scratching decision, or a head-scratching decision, excuse me. And now you go from Dorian Thompson-Robinson to Dante Moore, who was the 3rd best quarterback from the 2023 recruiting cycle. And from what I've read and the reports that I've heard, he has been, without a doubt, the best, most consistent quarterback for the Bruins throughout spring practice. And going into this year, if he does end up getting the start, how good is he going to perform? The wide receiving core, you lost Jake Bobo, but you do have a pretty good amount of talent at that position. You also hit the transfer portal pretty hard, which is what Chip Kelly has had to do in order to overcome the fact that UCLA doesn't really recruit at a great level. He uses the transfer portal pretty well. They had the 13th best transfer portal class last season in 2022. This year, they had the 6th best. Well, they had the 6th best transfer portal class last year. They had the 13th best transfer portal class from this past cycle. And they returned 3 starters on offense, which doesn't really give you a lot of confidence, but 2 out of 3 of those starters are on the offensive line. And they got 3 really good ones from the transfer portal. They got a really good left tackle from Old Dominion, who I think is going to be in the NFL when he decides to declare for the draft next year. You also got 2 really good interior offensive linemen who should start at your 2 offensive guard spots. Your running back position, I don't really have any concerns about, because one thing about Chip Kelly, this dude is able to find good running backs. He has a really good mix of guys who can do damage in the passing game. He also has your bruiser at running back. And you did get Carson Steele transferred from Ball State. He was one of the best running backs in the MAC. So you're going to be pretty deep at running back this year. And finally, UCLA is going to have what looks to be on paper a really solid defense, which is something that Chip Kelly never really has in all his years being a head coach. Not just in college football, but when he was a head coach for Philadelphia, he didn't have a good defense there neither. You got a new defensive coordinator. You got D'Anton Lynn, who is the son of Anthony Lynn, who was the former head coach of the LA Chargers. And from what I've heard from him in his press conferences, this dude knows football. I think he's going to be able to elevate this defense. And there's no reason why this defense shouldn't be good. This is probably one of the more talented defenses that the Bruins have had under Chip Kelly. They got a really good front seven. Their defensive line is going to be really good at getting pressure on the quarterback. Their linebackers are going to be really good. And something that this conference doesn't really have is good defense, especially good defensive line play. There are only a handful of teams in this conference that had good play out of their defensive lines last year. And for Chip Kelly, even though this man doesn't really have one of the most talented rosters in the Pac-12 this year, Chip Kelly makes his living on being able to scheme things up. Every single year, he's adding something different to the table. And I think with UCLA making the transition to the Big Ten, I don't think they're going to go to the Big Ten and be bottom dwellers. As long as Chip Kelly remains their head coach, I think that UCLA is going to be good enough to be a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten program. And I think potentially they could end up being a lot better than that if they can end up stepping up their recruiting. And from what people tell me, their recruiting isn't really all on Chip Kelly. The school kind of has some restrictions that kind of holds them back in recruiting to an extent. But I think with them joining the Big Ten, they should see a boost in recruiting. They could end up being a program that recruits on the outside of the top 25. Maybe they could crack the top 25 recruiting class every once in a while. But I do think with Chip Kelly, with his ability to utilize the transfer portal properly and being able to get the most out of the guys that he gets out of the transfer portal, UCLA should be a pretty solid program in the Big Ten. And going into their final season in the Pac-12, their out-of-conference schedule is not that tough. They played Coastal Carolina, which some people think could be an upset. I don't really see that happening. I think that UCLA should be able to beat Coastal Carolina. You got to play San Diego State on the road. You got to play North Carolina Central. So you should be 3-0 going into your conference opener, going on the road to Salt Lake City and playing Kyle Whittingham and Utah. Then you got a bye week after that game. You get to play Washington State, Oregon State on the road. Then you play Stanford, Colorado. You got to travel on the road to play Arizona, which isn't going to be an easy outing this year. You got Arizona State at home. And then you close your season against USC and Cal. I think the floor for UCLA this year is 6 wins. And I think the ceiling for UCLA this year, I'm probably going to say, is going to be 9, maybe 8 wins. Now, in between there, if I had to give you an actual record prediction, I think they win 7 games this year. I think there is going to be some growing pains with Dante Moore this year. Although you do avoid playing Oregon and Washington, teams that I think are going to have some of the better defenses in this conference. But he could struggle going on the road to Utah. That's going to be a really tough environment. You know, Utah has been amongst the best teams in the Pac-12 over the last couple of years. Kyle Whittingham is arguably one of the best coaches in college football right now. And for Dante Moore going on the road, if he does end up being announced a starter, which many Bruins fans feel that he will, he could struggle in that game. And really, I just think for Dante Moore, you're going to have a really good season out of him, but you're also going to have some games where he kind of struggles, especially having to play USC. That's going to be a big game. Oregon State, they're normally really good defensively. So I think for Chip Kelly this year, I think that this could be a year that they kind of regress a little bit. I don't think they're going to end up winning 9 or 8 games like they have the past 2 years, but I still think they're going to be good enough to get to a bowl game. I don't think Dante Moore is going to be underwhelming. I do think that he's going to be really good. I just think that when you're starting a true freshman quarterback potentially, you are going to have some growing pains. We don't normally see true freshman quarterbacks come in and have a complete full season where they just dominate. Even when Caleb Williams came in and replaced Spencer Rattler, his true freshman season at Oklahoma, I believe, or his freshman season, he struggled a little bit. He had some growing pains. So when you start a true freshman QB, you are going to have some growing pains. But I think for Chip Kelly, for the most part, he's going to be able to get the most out of UCLA in this offense this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do, once again, end up winning 8 or 9 games. But I think my record prediction for UCLA is probably going to be 7 wins. But even if they do take a step back in the record column, I still don't think that changes the fact that Chip Kelly has the Bruins trending in a really good direction. Heading into the Big Ten, you're going to have a really talented QB, which is always going to give you a shot, no matter how tough your conference is. He normally is really good at finding good offensive linemen, not just on the recruiting trail, but in the transfer portal. So I think that UCLA is trending in a really good direction under Chip Kelly.